With sun, no shine, but also striking new world order up your arm.
Hi all, and welcome to the normal show. I don't know what's normal and what day it is anymore. What have we done this week? Well, this is the Truth on an Integrity show. If you're new to it, and there's many new listeners, so what have we done since last Thursday? Well, I was going to have a rest on Sunday, which would have been my first day off in there 4 weeks, but unfortunately the guest didn't turn up at OYM, and I couldn't leave the lads swinging, so we did that show, which kind of fitted in nicely for them and for us, and it cleared a few things up, and then it kind of led into Tuesday with Ellen Carrier. She's doing a new show, and we spoke about finances, which is important to us all and will be important going forward. And then last night was epic in many ways. I think we delivered a show that leaves no questions unturned. Sadly, there is one or two who are rather bitter and rather twisted, and their egos have been knocked out of place a bit, and I'll be covering some of that in the second hour. That will finally clear up everything of what's going on. So look forward to that. And so tonight we're back to the normal show. And I'm sure you all enjoyed last night. You know, it was packed with information, some of which had been relayed in the show previously, some of which hadn't, clearly. Some of it we wanted to go into more depth into certain things as the narrative winds out. You know, sometimes you can only cover certain aspects at certain times because of certain ongoing things, and there's lots of ongoing things happening at the moment. There's some real heavy meetings going on with between the government and the military, as I understand it at this moment. The outcome of that, I've no doubt we will find out maybe later tonight. If we do get wind of it, we'll put it in the show. If not, it will come up either in a post or another show. So there's lots of things going on, and unfortunately we had another drill stroke live event yesterday in Florida on Valentine's Day, which is another ritual day, Valentine's Day Massacre. That's not been lost on some people. In case you didn't know, yes it is, it's a ritual day. And how many more times are the public, the general public, going to hear of a drill taking place on the morning where the same event that the drill is mimicking takes place allegedly live? How many more times is it going to take before people go, something's not right here? Sandy Hook, a drill and a live event. 9/11, a drill and a live event. London 7/7, a drill and a live event. Madrid, Barcelona, I could go on. At which point do people say, something's radically wrong here, and we have to look into this with our own eyes and our own ears, and not listen to the total BS being spread by the portal people? For those of you who are new, that's the news media. They tell news from a different world to ours because it doesn't match the reality of what we know. And I'm sure people are sick of it. I don't, to be quite honest, I haven't had the time to delve into the Florida incident and the school, whether it was valid, whether it really happened, or it's another one of these fake events. Time will tell. You know, the listeners to this show will probably know more than I have at this point on it. But how many more times are we going to have a drill and then a live event of the same happening? You know, there was the other one. There was a military drill in Boston, the marathon. So I've just named about 6 or 7 there. And events took place the same day. Ooh, but it's just a coincidence. Yeah, right. Poor the other one has got balls on it. What a load of crap. So we'll get into that more when I finally get some time to myself, and we'll find out more about Florida, no doubt. But if people have died there, then obviously Th&I will send their condolences to the families. But it appears they're not going to blame a Muslim this time. They're going to blame something to do with mental health, largely which they create, I might add. You know, with their bogus drugs and No Child Left Behind, which allowed schools to dictate the mental condition of your children and administer drugs accordingly. That was the hidden clause in No Child Left Behind. Oops. This is why we can't carry on ignoring everything. We have to delve into it, you know. There's been plenty of people who have took it upon themselves to delve into me and delve into Miss Manor. And yet, funny, they don't delve into the real people who are causing the problems in this world. Funny that, isn't it? The ones who are trying to fix and help always come under more investigation than the ones who are causing all the carnage. Why is that? Because it's the easy path. Ooh, we don't want to take on the government and we don't want to take on the Rothschilds, etc., etc. Why not? Are you going to spend your whole life being cowardly and taking on a so-called behemoth that everyone's built up that is completely undefeatable? But we have. These people, these bloodline families, these elites and these harbourers of secrets of who the real controller is, are all on their knees. The real controllers have gone, which is why the cabal have collapsed, because they have insufficient intelligence to run the system. They only knew half of it because of the compartmentalisation, and they thought they were clever enough to run it. Well, we've all seen what took place. They're clearly not. And they failed that badly that their own kind at the top end, the very few that are left, want to wipe out the minions on level 5 and level 6, as discussed last night. Oops. So all the familiar names of the former Illuminati, which is now the factions, they want to wipe all of them out. And who do you think pushed that? It wasn't the cowardly ones, was it? No, it was the people with guts like myself and all the listeners who stood up and says, we're here to be counted. We want to know the truth, however painful it may be. And I don't imagine many of you thought it was going to be this brutal when you first started. Well, it is. The truth is brutal. That's why I labelled us the sin eaters, because we're absorbing all their sins. While the cowardly people sit there in their own little bubbles thinking the world's fantastic and it's okay that 49,500 children each day die or go missing permanently. Well, it's not my child. Really? Well, you're complicit, each and every one of you. That don't pay it any attention, just ignore it. You are complicit in murder. It's as simple as that. the ones that ignore the homeless on the street corners. You're responsible for that because you choose to ignore it. You know there's a problem and you won't deal with it because it's always somebody else's problem, isn't it? No, it's all our problem. That's the difference. That's what being sovereign's all about. Personal responsibility. And it's what we have to pick up the baton and run with it and run fast. People say, well, what happens now? Well, what do you want to happen now? Is the question you need to ask. You know, you can come to me and says, is this a good idea? You know, but I'm not the be-all and end-all. Personal responsibility means you have to govern yourself, not allow schools and judges and police and governments to run it for you. Because it's not worked out too well, has it? They've infiltrated the whole system, or trusting doctors that they know what's best for the health for your child. Really? The same people who don't spend a single minute in 7 years on cures. But we just trust them because it's the doctor. Doctor what? Doctor who? Has he got a magic TARDIS and dispels cure pills? No. He's selling you poison. And we just lap it up. Enough's enough. We have to start taking our own responsibility and push forward a way where we create, because we have to, because they're not going to hand it to us on a plate. We have to create and be the change. Not when is this going to stop and when is that going to stop. How about we take responsibility for it as a collective? And I'm talking about the whole alternative media here. Yes, I know we've got differences. Yes, we know there's some of you playing faction games. And there's some of you playing Chinese elders and RV and all the other nonsense. It's all failed. All of it. It's collapsing in on itself. In six and a half weeks' time, unless they go with the real solution, this world will collapse financially. That's their alternative. And not only will our lives suffer, but so will theirs. Because people are under the illusion that these people are rich. No, they were rich. With their mirror accounts that no longer exist. With their dipping into the manor world holding trust that's no longer accessible. Oops. Pledging assets. Leveraging and doing backdoor deals for uranium. Hello, Anne. Hello, Obama. And Anne trying to leverage, well, not leverage, actually give away the whole of America's in-ground resources for the whole of the future to the UN. And whoever that entity is still walking amongst us, while people are still happy clapping it. Because I'm a Democrat. No, you are a prat. Because if you keep playing party games, you're going to see the same idiotic politicians. And Republicans are no better. Conservative Labour back in the UK. Same clowns. Who have less knowledge than people who have listened to this show. You'd be amazed at how little they know that we do. Not a clue. Why? Because they're not told. They're only there for 4 years, or potentially 4 years. They might get voted out, and they mightn't like being voted out or being replaced. And they might turn nasty on them. So they're not told. This is how the system has worked, but it's failed. Because now their own lack of knowledge of how the system worked and ran has come back to bite. They thought they could just carry on. We'll drop the codes in. I'm important. I'm king of the world. No, it didn't work. So now they have to come to us. That's what we face in the next 6.5 weeks. Trump wants liquidity into the country. The only option for liquidity is the manor world holding trust. Oops. And no matter what internet warriors complain, while they talked, we delivered. Right, let's get into some news. More fun and games in the White House. It's like what's that Charles game with the chairs, the merry-go-round with the chairs. Some in and some out, and let's shake it all about. But there's been a few seconds this week again, and unfortunately it's to do with so-called allegations, and we're yet to be seen whether they're actually true. Some allegations can come back to bite. We'll find that out in the next hour. Anyway, a White House speechwriter resigned on Friday after his former wife claimed he was violent and emotionally abusive during their turbulent 2.5-year marriage. Allegations that he vehemently denied, saying he was the one who was victimized. And the abrupt departure of David Sorensen, who is a speechwriter who worked closely with senior policy advisor Stephen Miller, came as the Washington Post, not biased there, are they, was preparing a story about abuse claims by his ex-wife Jessica Corbett. Corbett told the Post that she reported his behaviour to the FBI last fall as the Bureau was conducting a background check of Sorensen. Funny how they all come out the woodwork when the ex does something important. Hello, former Mrs. Williams. Oops. President Trump, frustrated by his staff's handling of the abuse allegations against Rob Porter, is increasingly venting about Chief of Staff John Kelly. This is who has since departed, if memory serves me correctly, and speculating about potential replacements, according to multiple sources familiar with the matter. One senior administration official and 3 other people briefed on those conversations told NBC News Trump is angry at Kelly's initial statement of effusive support about Porter's character, and then the quick walk back the next day. And after allegations of physical and verbal abuse were made public by 2 of Porter's ex-wives, Kelly said in a statement, Rob Porter is a man, and I quote, of true integrity and honour. Interesting words they used there. That may be a hint. And I can't say enough good things about him. And then what happens next? Rachel L. Brand, the number 3 official at the Justice Department now, plans to step down after 9 months on the job. maybe she was pregnant, as the country's top law enforcement agency has been under attack by President Trump. And that's good news, I say. Just this, not just us. And according to two people who were briefed on her decision, Ms. Brand's profile has risen in part because she is next in line of succession behind the Deputy Attorney General, Rod J. Rosenstein. Watch him closely. Bye-bye. Who is overseeing the special counsel's inquiry into alleged Russian influence in the 2016 election. Anyone else bored of Russian influence? Oh, I am. What about Langley influence? Oh, dear me. Mr. Trump has called the investigation a witch hunt and has considered firing Mr. Rosenstein. I did say watch those three. Mexico, next leader of the notorious Zetas. Wonder why they're called that. Could it be through past history and certain star beings? Anyway, the Zetas drug cartel has been caught in Mexico City. According to Mexican authorities, Jose Maria Guiza Valencia is wanted in the US and had offered a $5 million reward for his capture. Known as Z43, he is a dual US-Mexican citizen and is thought to have run the Zetas southeastern operations. The US State Department said he was responsible for importing thousands of kilograms of cocaine and meth to the US every year. I wonder who his bosses were. I think we all know. On its website it said the Zetas have murdered an untold number of Guatemalan civilians during the systematic takeover of the Guatemalan border region with Mexico in recent years. All for the benefit of getting high. Is it really that much worth it? I would say no, but some people will argue different, and that's their choice. Cape Town. Now this is something that can be fixed within a month once the funding is released. We've got members in THI who deal with clean drinking water and how to clean it and reproduce it at a very low cost. Even dirty oil sludge water. And all we're waiting for is the funding. So these things can be fixed. Of course, Mr. Gaddafi built a big water plant because Africa is sitting on a giant freshwater lake. You just have to dig deep enough. Cape Town faces the unenviable situation of being the first major city in the modern era to run out of drinking water altogether. However, the plight of the drought-hit South African city is just one extreme example of a problem that experts have long been warning about: water scarcity. Yes, Nestle. Time to raid their headquarters and give all the water back to the people, methinks. Despite covering about 70% of the Earth's surface, water, especially drinking water, is not as plentiful as one might think. Yes, because Nestle have scooped it all up, along with the bug-eyed bastards playing games here in the past. But only 3% of it is actually fresh. I don't think it's that low. I think it's a little bit higher than that. I think that's a bit low to me. Over 1 billion people lack access to water, and another 2.7 billion find it scarce for at least 1 month of each year. 2.7 billion and 1 billion lack access to water. 1 in 6, 1 in 7, perhaps 1 in 8 now, or maybe 1 in 4. because I think that's probably nearer the real figure. Some would argue different. Either way, there's no excuse in this day and age with the so-called wealth that's been created and bogus means created as well over the past 100 years, as was documented last night, for anybody to be short of any water. If we can spend 7 trillion on going into Iraq for oil pipelines, we can spend a lot less than that just installing water pipelines. Oh, but there's no money. But there's always money for war, and there's always money for oil. Why is that? Anyway, a 2014 survey of the world's 500 largest cities estimate that 1 in 4 are in a situation of water stress, according to the UN-endorsed projections. Global demand for fresh water will exceed supply by 40% in 2030. Hello, the UN talking about their agenda again, 2030. Yeah, right. Good luck with that one. And according to the UN, thanks to a combination of climate change, hello, chemtrails, really, human action, really, and population growth, really, after listening to the story last week about the decimating the Kenyan females, Mexicans, Philippines and Guatemalans for the next 2 generations. I don't think population is a growth issue, personally. It shouldn't be a surprise then that Cape Town is just the tip of the iceberg. And here are the next ones who are in grave danger. Sao Paulo, Bangalore, Beijing, Cairo, Jakarta, Moscow, who has 1/4 of the world's freshwater reserves in Russia. But the country is plagued by pollution problems caused by the industrial legacy of the Soviet era. Well, we have people in our group that can fix that at a really nice price. Just get some funding, please. Istanbul, Mexico City, no surprise there. London, no surprise there either. Tokyo and Miami. Oops. Given they've just added 250,000 Puerto Ricans into Florida, I don't think that's going to help the water situation. But then these people don't particularly care about that. They only care about their own profits. And I hope one day that the clowns who instigated that in Puerto Rico are dealt with and the people go back with their homes built, unlike Haiti. Saudi, there seems to be a move to change old ways in Saudi, some of them anyway. And a top religious cleric has said this week that Saudi women should not have to wear the abaya, a long, loose-fitting robe used to cover their bodies in public. And the cleric, Mr. Al-Mutlaq, a member of the Council of Senior Scholars, said women should dress modestly, but this does not have to mean wearing the abaya. Saudi women are currently required to wear the garment by law, really. And the cleric's intervention comes amid moves to modernise Saudi society and relax restrictions on women. More than 90% of pious Muslim women in the Muslim world do not wear the abayas. Only 10%. It's like abortion. My opinion is that's the woman's choice, and nobody should be making any laws to tell male or female what they can and cannot wear or what they can and cannot do with their body, providing it's not infringing on other people. Because that is fascism right in your face. Maybe we'll hear more on that later. Here's another report of Big Pharma and how they overlook things and don't tell the public, but we're supposed to trust doctors and nurses, aren't we? Because they know better. Sorry they don't. And that's not a slight on doctors and nurses, by the way. It's a slight on the system that creates the lack of knowledge. Hundreds of fire deaths may be linked to the use of skin creams containing paraffin. A senior firefighter has warned during a BBC investigation, found most of the creams do not carry a warning even. Despite calls to alert people to the fire risk, if people use the creams regularly but do not often change clothes or bedding, paraffin residue can soak into the fabric and make it flammable. The medicines regulator is conducting a safety review into the creams used for conditions like eczema and psoriasis. And last March, a BBC investigation discovered 37 deaths were linked to skin creams containing paraffin in England alone since 2010. It is believed there has been a further 8 deaths since November 2016. Read the labels. Of course, people like to invest in charities and again don't find out where the money's going or what the staff are up to. Latest in the news is Oxfam. If you go and check out what their CEOs make, perhaps it's time to avoid Oxfam like Red Cross, Goodwill and all the others. And I've heard some people saying, oh, Goodwill's really good. Yeah, 90% of the money goes to the shareholders. 90. Check it out yourself. You want to give money to good causes, give it to the foundation. That's what we're trying to get up and running. Oxfam did not give the Charity Commission full details about the use of prostitutes by some aid workers in Haiti in 2011. The charity did tell the regulator it was investigating so-called inappropriate sexual behaviour, plus bullying, harassment and staff intimidation. The Charity Commission took no further action, but said it would have acted differently had it known all the facts. Yeah, right. You knew all the facts, but like the Pope and the Vatican, you just decided to cover it up until people start digging into things deeper. So after the further digging, Oxfam then sacked 4 workers and let 3 resign. They're probably the money people, but denies any cover-up, really. The Charities Commission said the alleged behaviour had absolutely no place in society, and neither does Oxfam, and charities needed to be held to the highest standards, absolutely. Deputy CEO has since quit Oxfam, and no doubt that will be on full pension and a payoff. These clowns seem to have that all stitched up for themselves, as you know. US Vice President Mike Pence said his country and South Korea are in complete agreement on the need to maintain pressure on North Korea. I don't think so. Speaking on his way home from the Winter Olympics in South Korea, Mr. Pence said there was no daylight between the two allies on the issue. The Games has seen better ties between the two Koreans, despite tensions over the North's alleged nuclear program. But the US has distanced itself from North Korean overtures. On Saturday, North Korea leader Kim Jong-un invited the South's President Moon Jae-in to Pyongyang for talks. And I don't know whether people remember me saying about 12, 18 months ago. It was early on in THI, and I said North and South Korea will unify, whether the cabal like it or not. Maybe you're seeing the first steps. And if those talks go ahead, it would be the first summit in more than a decade between the two Korean leaders. Mr. Moon said the Koreans should make it happen and encourage the North to return to negotiations with the United States. And hopefully that will improve things in the whole area and they turn their focus of attention on the real clowns in that area, which is the Chinese elders, dragons and the Rothschilds. And then we can get on with a whole heap more of things of fixing. Just a note on the Olympics. The Olympians of both countries have shown the path to harmony, in my opinion. They went in together, they had a joint hockey team. This is what happens when people are left to their own devices. Despite all the portal people, fear porn and drivel, people just get on with it. Sport and music are generally the great leveler. People forget that other people are from a different country, or they speak a different language, or they're a different gender, different colour, and just enjoy it. It's just a pity the politicians and the puppet string holders can't just leave people alone. But maybe one day soon that will change. Judging by last night. Maybe sooner than we think. US, no, I'll have to stop saying that. American President Donald Trump has unveiled his long-touted plan to revamp American infrastructure. But critics, and there's always critics when somebody chooses to do something beneficial for the people, labelled it a scam. What about the 23.5 trillion that went missing? Wasn't that a scam? What about the 7 trillion was spent in Iraq? But no, let's ask for 200 billion to do something for the benefit of the people and the economy in America, and no, it's a scam and it's all a pile of crap. Maybe it's the people who complain need to be removed as a scam, in my opinion. Mr. Trump wants Congress to authorise $200 billion over a decade. It's hardly going to upset the economy, that is it, 200 billion to spend on roads, highways, ports and airports. The President hopes the American states and also the private sector, which will be the trust, will stimulate another 1.3 trillion in improvements. Yes, the trust will be paying for that. The plan was a Trump election promise, but it could entail Americans paying, here we go with the fear porn, higher local taxes, fees and tolls. There's no evidence to support that, and I don't think the people, as the truth rolls out, are going to tolerate that nonsense when we're owed a tidy sum. And the blueprint is part of a 4.4 trillion budget proposal which abandons the long-held Republican goal of balancing the federal budget within a decade. Well, we can actually balance the federal budget within 7 weeks. Should certain people grow a set. Trump went on, and good on him. We have spent 7 trillion in the Middle East. 7 trillion. What a mistake, Mr. Trump said at the White House on Monday, and we're trying to build roads and bridges and fix bridges that have fallen down, and we have a hard time getting the money. It's crazy. Yes, it is, Mr. Trump, and perhaps you need to roll out an executive order and fire those clowns who won't spend money on the American people. A Baltimore jury has found, at long last, 2 police officers guilty for their role in a sprawling police corruption case that involved robbing city residents. Daniel Herzl and Marcus Taylor were convicted of racketeering and robbery charges and cleared of others. They were part of an elite unit tasked with seizing illegal firearms. But instead the squad went rogue. How do you say that? They went rogue, like they weren't to begin with. Not all cops are bad, but I'm sorry, their reputation goes before them. It's up to them to regain the public trust, not the other way round. Stealing cash and guns and reselling drugs that they collected. 6 other officers had already pled guilty, some of who testified in court. Now, the Baltimore police have struggled to regain public trust, go figure, after the 2015 death of Freddie Gray, a young black man in custody. The city's police department is currently subject to federal monitoring as part of a court-ordered reforms due to discriminatory and unconstitutional policing. Interesting term they used there. Haven't heard that in a while. The verdict follows 3 weeks of explosive testimony in a federal courtroom, and additional officers named in the testimony have either been suspended or announced their retirement. Really? Well, it's about time, because unfortunately the police are just as corrupt as some of the people on the streets, if not worse. And I know there are some good people, cops, in the force, and some of them get threatened to join those certain criminal elements. This is part of the problem of a lot of the police being part of the Brotherhood. So they're frightened to say anything. That type of control and order, secret societies, you know what JFK said? That has to stop going forward also. But I would like to see it stopped. Because then the police go back to doing the job that they're supposed to do, which is to keep law and order, not operate criminal rings. So today, after years of attempts to remove him, and months of speculation, Jacob Zuma has been forced to step down as the president of South Africa. Mr. Zuma has been in a vulnerable position since the end of his final term as head of the ruling ANC in December last year, when his rival Cyril Ramaphosa was chosen to lead the party. The allegations of corruption around Mr. Zuma were unrelenting, and particularly damaging were the ongoing claims that a wealthy family from India, please take note, the Guptas, had gained lucrative state contracts and exerted undue influence on the government appointments because of a corrupt relationship with the president. While the Guptas and Mr. Zuma consistently denied the claims, the story of what is known as state capture kept coming, and Mr. Zuma is also facing the possible reinstatement of 18 charges of, wait for it, you've heard this familiar term before, corruption and fraud. But this time you can add in money laundering extending from a 1990s arms deal. More evidence of house cleaning around the world, you bet. Right, we're going to have a musical break now, and then we're going to go into a couple of things. Hi all, and welcome back. What about us? Well, we've listened last night to a lot of positive things, and a chance of humanity progressing to a brighter future, one which we have to create, as I've kept saying. But as we got closer to certain things, and people thought, that'll never work. But nothing ever works in the alternative media, does it? RVs, 2 weeks, full disclosures coming next week, you name it. And people ignored, and then it got close, and then people decided to put the goose-stepping boots in. And I've said before, I don't like outing people. But if people are going to make allegations about me, about Kim, and about the World Manor Trust, when we've answered all the questions that were relevant, any small doubts were raised last night. There's a couple of questions I've noticed that I will address later on. But this particular person, I've sat on it for 4 years. You know, some people would think I just out people. No, I don't. I don't particularly like it. I see it as negative. But when certain people decide to call me out and make lies, and then pass off bullshit as something real and facts about people I care about, then I'm going to step in. So this next piece is about Anna, the person known as Anna von Reitz. The real name, Anna Maria Wilhelmina Hannah Sophia Reitzinger von Reitenstein von Lettau / Vorbeck. Private attorney, no doubt, in service to His Holiness the Pope. That's who she labels herself as. So let's look at some of these names. Anna Maria is fairly obvious, given she's denounced she's a Catholic. She says she's Lutheran. People can read about Lutheranism and come to their own conclusions. But the name Lettau, let's start with that one. A by name in the 14th century given to a few Pomerian nobility from Vorbeck, which is why the name is Lettau Vorbeck. And apparently Lettau means Lithuania in Saxon. Saxon is German. Reitenstein is a German dynasty, one of the families of Franconian knights. Reitzinger is the noble establishment of the House of Bavaria. Oops. Illuminati, anyone? That's where it came from. 1776. Some nobility families plus Adam Weishaupt. Wilhelmina is a female given name, again originating from the German language, and is popular with the royals and noble people, like Wilhelmina of the Netherlands, Queen of the Kingdom of Netherlands, Princess Wilhelmina of Denmark, Wilhelmina Amelia of Brunswick, Holy Roman Empire of the German nation, oops, Queen of the Germans, Wilhelmine of Bayreuth, again, German princess, older sister of Frederick the Great and the composer, Wilhelmina of Prussia, another German princess, and a following German princess at a later date, also of Prussia, and Wilhelm of Baden, a German Grand Duchess of Hesse and the Rhine. Let's have a look at another one of her names. Sophia is a derivative of the goddess Isis, and I don't need to mention the connotations of that name to our listeners. You'll know what that means. Many people won't know or recognize the term or what von means, as in Anna von Reitz. Von is a title. It means very old nobility of Germanic houses, in other words, elite families, bloodline. So what has Anna done? an awful lot of claims. People had 3 years to dismantle and return all funds back. This was in September of 2013, and so we all waited for September 2016 and for the end of the bar lawyer people. And where did that go? Nowhere. Anna writes letters to Mr. Trump on various things. Where did that go? Same again. Nowhere. Anna claims she's a judge. Is that validated? No again. I can claim I'm a judge. I'm a judge of myself, which is held in my own living room. It doesn't mean I can go out on the internet and make lawful statements or legal statements. It doesn't make it valid, does it? So Anna has claimed, and she writes letters declaring this and that to the Pope, Obama, The Hague, General Dunford was another one, General Dun F. all, and now Trump. What I'm going to ask tonight is I'm going to challenge Anna von Reitinger, full name, to put online all the replies received from the former named. All of them. If there was any received, or if I suspect to be the case and no replies were received, that then proves her validity is not worth much, I'm afraid. Anyone can write letters to anyone. It doesn't mean it or you can change a whole system. Anna also told the person who stirred the hornet's nest up this week to file some papers and he will be free and he will receive a large payout soon. We've heard that before, haven't we? How's that working out, Ernest? Like the RV, I presume. It's coming soon, except it won't. Now, Anna has made claims via email that I have been involved in 3 get-rich-quick schemes. Really? It'd be interesting to find out who they are, as as most people who know me, know I haven't earned a cent out of this. And as I said, many who really know I've suffered a great cost doing this, unlike Ms. Reitinger. Now, presumably one of them is Neil Keenan, who she still works with. If he's still around and not some double. Now, Mr. Keenan was Drake's contact, not mine. And promised me Jack, and I got Jack from Neil Keenan. But Anna got paid by Neil Keenan. Oops. Which is more than can be said for anyone else who's been around the Langley agent, as most got their funds taken off them, except Anna got paid. I'm presuming the second allegation is or was Judge Nadu. Again, I was promised nothing by the judge, and again, I will receive nothing. I have not paid into the scheme, and so subsequently I won't be paid out should it come to fruition. And I'm presuming the third get-rich scheme, which alludes to, is the Manor World Holding Trust. To date, I've earned the sum total of 0 cents. The Manor World Holding Trust had to ask me what compensation I required to be the foundation frontman. Because you see, Anna, you think you know people, but clearly you don't. Money is not my driving passion. It never was. It's true, it's the source of all evil. And yes, we do need funds to start improving things. But if we wait for your pledges and your declarations, we'll all be 6 foot under. And one listen to any one of our shows will have told you that, Anna. But that didn't fit your agenda, did it? Then we come to the Bank of Dene, D-E-N-E. Anna von Reitz is the one that did all the legal paperwork for this particular bank. Now, this will sound very, very familiar. She is also trying to get all the gold in ground under what's known as the Hidalgo Treaty. Sound familiar? It should do. It's a bit like Keenan and the gold in the bunkers. To be released to Anna von Reitz, as she is the, according to her, the matriarchal clan leader of some Alaskan tribe. That will be the Fukawi tribe, as in, who the fuck are we tribe? Because it doesn't exist. Now, it's funny how the German faction have infiltrated so many of the tribal people, isn't it? We've mentioned it before with the Lakota and also the Cherokee. Her partner in the bank, a guy by the name of Mr. Young, is a Bohemian Grove participant. Oops. He called Manor World Holding Trust and asked her for the codes while he was over in China. So if Miss Manor, known as Kim, is so bogus, why are they asking her for the codes? So Kim told her that the bank had to be licensed to hold US dollars. At which point Anna insisted she didn't need to have a license because she's Anna von Reitz. Which sadly is not true on her part, and no matter how much she thinks she believes it is required currently. May always be required. Not everything will change. And basically she wanted this bank to issue, wait for it, because this sounds familiar again, issue bonds off the gold. It's all very 1933 again, isn't it? Well, that bank that Anna von Reitz was involved and still involved in is now being sued under a RICO. Oops. Me thinks that could turn out like Heather Giraffe. But of course, Anna's a judge. She's beyond judging. So here's my challenge again. The second challenge to Miss Reitzinger. I will be posting all the details of all the funds collected by the foundation online for all to see. For last year, I posted the previous year on the Facebook page. What I'm asking you, Anna, is to do the same for your internet earnings, and we'll see who's getting rich. That's my second challenge to you. Anna von Reitz has a cousin, and it is connected, who also makes extraordinary claims that goes and went nowhere, as Emily Elizabeth Windsor Cragg, who alleges she is the daughter of King Edward VIII and filed a claim to the UK Crown with the UK Parliament and charges Elizabeth II with treason. Now she claims validity, but then uses the fake royal name. You see, the Queen of England is not called Elizabeth Windsor. It is Elizabeth Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, as in the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, which is another German dynasty. Queen Elizabeth's family changed the name during World War I from Saxe-Coburg-Gotha to the name of the house that they were staying in, which is why they're called Windsor, as the British public were not aware of which side they were on during the First World War. Now, some of you may have doubts about that, but some of you will have witnessed Edward teaching the young Elizabeth the Nazi hand sign in the newspapers last year. You see, they were all Germans. And not only Germans, they were Nazis to boot. So yet again, from the family of von Reitz, we have a cousin making big claims, and years later, nothing comes of it. But the question, if Emily is valid, why didn't she use the real name Emily Saxe-Coburg-Gotha? Because it would expose, like Anna, they're both German nobility families. And here's why it's important. The German nobility of which Anna comes from, as detailed earlier, are very fond of changing names around. They change one letter. Like Bauer became Bayer. You can see many, many more examples of that. Both are linked to the Rothschilds, by the way, Bauer and Bayer. Reitzinger becomes Reitz. Why? Because it conceals who Anna really was connected to. Not Pope Francis. Oh no, not Pope Francis and the Jesuits, as many suspect. She had to defend herself at length, as she was accused of being a Jesuit last week. But Pope Ratzinger, the previous Pope, who was an SS officer, aka Nazi. Ratzinger, Reitzinger. See how it works? How they switch the names round and why they don't give the full name. Miss von Reitz was a private attorney for him, not Francis. Because the reality is, Anna is a paid-up member of the Nazi Party, and also the faction is why. I knew this 4 years ago. I kept it quiet. I'll explain why shortly. So it's all hidden and cloaked, just like all the paperclip people, Project Paperclip. Her partner, Belcher, is the Anglo-Saxon version of Bechler, another German surname. Are you getting the picture now? The Saxons, I might add, were Germanic people that invaded and moved to England several hundred years before the Norman conquest, and the Belisir, as in Belsir, which is the original name of Belcher, arrival in England. Again, you see in the picture. So here's where we're at with Anna von Reitzinger, who spoke with Kim during 2016 and did some legal work with her, as I understand. She knew fully who she was and what she was involved in, and yet waits until after Kim completes the sovereignty to then attempt to discredit her. Why is that? Why would you wait 18 months? Anna's fond of calling people out. For those of you who remember the hit piece with Karen Hudis, except that was an illusion. Because Emily, if you go and look on her Twitter, who's Anna's cousin, is still connected with Karen Hudis. Oops. They're all in it the same. So why wait? Why did Anna von Reitz, who knew exactly who Kim was, who she worked with, who she works for, and what she is now, and said nothing, and then calls it BS, and then in the next paragraph actually validated what Kim had done? On one paragraph, she calls Trump an idiot, or basically, on the previous paragraph, she's talking about, I wrote to Trump to tell him to fix things. Well, if he's an idiot, why are you writing to him? Or is he only an idiot now because he didn't go with your Nazi faction? She then adds fear-mongering into the mix for good measure. This then smacks to me of pure bitterness. Anna clearly wanted to be the one who delivered, but while she spent endless hours writing letters with no return, our team got on with fixing things and actually delivering something. It's the old ego issue again, rearing its ugly head. To me personally, it wouldn't matter to me if Neil Keenan did it. As what is important is it got done. And attempting to denigrate someone who has actually done something is why things take so much long and we all are in the wait club. Ego, selfishness, bitterness and insecurity kicks in with these people, and if they're challenged, all the others making claims like Kim and I have had to answer for, then just maybe we'll get a clearer picture of the faction-laden filth operating in our midst. Why is it only 2 people are being challenged? Doesn't that tell you something? So to Anna, put out the responses to your letters you received back from the people you said you wrote to, for the public to see and validate, and reveal to the public your earnings out of the community so the public can validate that also. I'm doing mine. We've shown our proof. We're asking you to do the same. It's only fair. Now, as I said, I've known most of this knowledge for the last 4 years. I spoke to her personally 4 years ago, before she became the internet sensation, and caught up with her knowledge. But I chose to sit on it and see how things panned out. Like I keep saying, I don't really like outing people. But if people are going to start making false allegations and denigrating people actually trying to do something, then I'm going to step on people. But she's demanding donations for living law and other things, while accusing others falsely of being involved in get-rich-quick schemes. Really? That was the final straw for me. And I find it, all of it, disappointing. So she's done all this letters and all this work. To what end? What has it achieved? Sadly, a sum total of 0. Now, I personally hope Anna sees the light and a path forward and quits her Nazi connections. We do know Anna. We've known for a long time. and moves forward for the benefit of all. She is, in my opinion, has so much to offer and could be a massive help to the public and also the government officials in educating the people on past history and law. And I think she's done absolutely fantastic work on the internet, educating people, aside from the outlandish claims and the schemes, to be a justifiable source of past history and legal knowledge. Some of it's quite extraordinary. And I hope she and her sidekick, Keenan, and others realise the game of playing for the factions is up. It's game over. You lost. Get over it. All your resources, unlimited, and you still couldn't take the people down. And yes, it was one of your own that took you down. That's how life works. Not everyone should be written off. Kim said herself, she was part of the system. You can't get inside the system like we have been given the knowledge of unless you were part of it. Many have been born into it. They had no choice. They were threatened. But many of the younger ones are now deciding, I'm not going the old failed path. There was a mention of Procter & Gamble last night. We all know that they're part of the big pharma. We all know that they came forward with outlandish claims 4 or 5 years ago, or certainly 2 of them did, which again collected a load of donations and went nowhere. But we've spoken to them because we can't go forward in a timely manner without including most. We can always get the people on side to a point, but do they have sufficient courage to take on the cabal like we did? So the cabal are going down more and more each day. That's becoming obvious. The change. People always say, when is it going to change? It already has. It's happening right in front of you. Every week now I'm talking about a president or a vice president or a person from the Department of Justice or some other government department being fired. It's called house cleaning or draining the swamp. So it's all going down, Anna. And unless you and the likes of Keenan and others that have played the faction games or worked for covens step down now and come and help the people rebuild, you will be dragged down with them. So my appeal for you is to step off your faction platform and come and really help the people as part of a team, not Anna von Reitz rules the world. Time to step down and step forward for the benefits of all. You will be welcomed, including Mr. Keenan. You know my opinion of that man. He has debts to repay. That's his own responsibility. But before you start discrediting others, please clean your own houses. But sometimes the hammer of truth hits back, and hard. Hi all and welcome back. Those two songs by Lamb, Are You Wise Enough? And the second one is one of our members, new member Tony Edge, Not About You. Kind of fitting for the last piece really. Are you wise enough to step forward for the benefit of the all and not for the self or some faction? Like I said, it's not about you. It's not about me either. It's about all of us. It always was. We've said this from day one. No one's coming to save you. You've also said it yourself many times, Anna. But you seem to be the one that's blocking. Unless it involves Anna von Reitz. We've seen too many of those egos in the alternative media. Far too many. Unless it's their plan, it's my way or the highway. That's just repeating the old programming paths. You think we're going to get change doing that? We're not. We're just not. It's about thinking and acting different. I've said it thousands of times on this show now. But it is. It's that simple. Everything is simple. We could fix the economy overnight. Instead of wasting money on lottery, we could put it in the foundation and we can provide jobs for people. We could get homeless off the streets. We can create and manufacture things, which we have a dearth of in this country, which is why our trade deficit is so large. Built by Americans, bought by Americans, reduces that trade deficit and also reduces the fun in games that's played out globally. You heard it last night. Countries don't matter to them. They just use countries at the front. It's like the cabal plan was to Russia and China to wipe out the West. And then the Russians were told that the next stage was the Chinese would wipe the Russians out. Oops. Mr. Putin didn't like that too much. But he should know the game. He was trained as a young boy by someone I know to be a cabal member, to play the good guy in a bad system. And he's done that at times until he found out the real truth. But it's funny how people have to be shown the real truth numerous times before it actually sinks in. And yet, bullshit that's spread all over the internet just drops in people's heads left and so easily. It's like a hot knife through butter, with no one challenged. Like the blue chicken cult. Yet again, like I mentioned earlier, how letters and names just drop off. Blue Sphere Alliance became the Sphere Alliance, became the Sphere, became the Alliance. And no one said anything. What happened to the blue sphere? And what happened to the beans? And this is how things change over time. You know, it's not just Corey Good and Anna von Reitz. You know, the system has done this for years, where they've added Latin in and changed one letter. We've said it before about the Constitution, the real one. Is it for or of? Is it the state of Florida or Florida State? Now that's something that Anna von Reitz has done fantastic work, and I'll keep saying it because she has, in educating myself included on some of that knowledge. I want to see her expand that, not denigrate people who have done something. That's just aiding them. And as pointed out last night, do we expect to get everything that we want? Not really. We only get everything that we want when we've got everyone on board, all pulling in the same direction. Currently, as it stands, whilst we're winning, there's still people who are pulling in the opposite direction, playing faction games, waiting for Dinar payouts that will never ever arrive, while the world economy crashes around them. Bitcoin, stock market, bank accounts, central bank accounts, government bank accounts. It was all told to you very clearly last night. They have nothing left. Everything is just an illusion. And one of the first questions tonight about the Rothschilds. Is it possible that the estate has been seized in Australia and they're not telling us, and it does seem to be a bit of a coincidence after the executive order? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. But what I do know is it's a fire sale. Since when have the Rothschilds fire saled anything? They've bought in fire sales when they've crashed people's businesses and homes and bought them up for pennies on the dollar. Hello, Clintons, Haiti. It's a sign of their desperation to have some money in hand to play with. But 110 million in their world doesn't go far. It goes a long way in our world, but not theirs. They've got mercenaries to pay. They've got military to pay around the world. They've got news. It's a misnomer in itself. They've got portal people to pay. CNN hasn't been paid in numbers of months. Why do you think they're firing them all? Because they can't afford to keep them anymore. So it's all an illusion that they've got vast wealth. It's all gone. That was spelled out quite clearly last night, the how and why it's all gone. Because they're not allowed to loot anymore. They're not allowed to leverage for multiple lifetimes, never mind one, anymore. They have to show the assets. And quite clearly, to everyone with an ounce of common sense, they don't have the assets to support anything. Whether it's Agenda 21, whether it's Agenda 2030, whether it's pandemic Zika viruses, whether it's the massive false flag they've been trying to do to America for the last 12 months, or whether it's the RV. With the new system, again, it was explained to you all very clearly last night, with the new system, you have to balance the books. That means you have to show an asset that supports it. Not I will leverage this over and over again, or I will print the same duplicate number notes. No. Stopped. All governments are now aware that not to allocate numbers to these bogus notes. So everywhere they go now, they're hampered. And this is what I was calling 4 or 5 years ago. You have to do things that puts them on the defensive. For 16,500 years, they've rode roughshod over this planet and its people, virtually unopposed. And yet within a decade, we've brought them to the knees, and yet people still say it's not happening quick enough. Compared to the population of the planet, it was a very small number that started out to make the changes. In essence, it's still small, but their numbers have reduced drastically. That we outnumber them now. Oops. Everyone around the world, as she explained last night, we've spoken to all the governments. And like I said earlier, you'd be astonished at how little they know, including Mr. Trump, including Mr. Obama, who was there 8 years. I could sit Mr. Obama here for half an hour to half a day, and his jaw would drop, because they don't know. And has it taken some convincing? Absolutely. They had no idea this level of system existed. And to be quite honest, neither did most of the internet. I've seen the system, and it's nothing like what's portrayed on the internet, with pyramids and all this. You have no idea. Absolutely extraordinary system. That when I first saw it, I thought, how the F are we going to bring this down? And then a voice in my head said, you already have. In a decade. 16,500 years of control of the D level. To get to the second question, does she mean D level or Draco? Yes. Dictator D, Draco. There's reasons why we don't put that in those shows, because again, you'd be astonished at how many heads of state don't know that information, don't even know they exist, and yet our team's met them. We know they exist. That particular group thinks humans are shit under the shoe, incapable of anything. They're not the only group that think that, by the way. But now we have an opportunity to show the Draco and the other groups that we can chart a better path for humans and this planet. We now have that opportunity. And that's all it is, as it stands, an opportunity. There's no guarantees that we're not going to play ego games like Wilcock and apparently yesterday Anna von Reitz, because it's not about her, that it's all bullshit. How are you going to go forward with that? If she thought she was bullshit, why did she work with her? Why did she ask her for the live codes? Doesn't make much sense, does it? Or has she been sent out by the factions to throw a spanner in the works? Because, you know what? Something did actually work. Drake, it's time for him to stand up as well. You know, I've outed a number of people because I felt it was necessary. And it wasn't necessary at that time, because I saw her as doing good work. She was educating people, and we're chronically lacking on this planet is education. You've got 90% of Americans who don't know their own history. That has to stop. You know, once we achieve what should always be the first goal is making sure everyone has the basic needs in life. You know, there's those people here in America who complain, I haven't got this and I haven't got that. Well, you try, I don't know where my next meal's coming from. I'm going to drink brown, virus-riddled water because that's all I've got. And I'm going to live under a tree in 90 plus degrees and then complain. Where you're seeing your children pushed into wars. You're seeing your children used as sex slaves for some bizarre voodoo reality that if you have sex with a virgin of 2 years of age, you're cured of AIDS. Yeah, right. Wonder who pulled that one. That will be the Lord again. What he says goes. Not no more it don't. So when we start complaining, we really have to get perspective. So when that is successful, that everyone has the basic needs in life that most Americans already have, then we can move forward. And the two most prominent things that we need more than anything on this planet, before we talk about technologies and all this gadgets and convenient stuff, is education and health. Because people, no matter which country, religion, race, that's well fed with clean water, non-plastic food, with a shelter over their heads, with affordable energy, whatever that energy may be. There's no need for it to be the prices they are now. And the reason it is because all the utilities have shareholders. Those people are the lowest of the low to me, that make money on the basic necessities in life. That needs a radical rethink. And then you go on and provide a proper education for the first time, possibly since the tribal people. Because everything that's happened in the last 1,000 years is largely bullshit. All of it. Be it history, archaeology, science, the whole lot. Steaming pile of faction, cabal-led crap. All taken away from what we are, who we are, where we came from, and how long we've been here. So we need massive amounts of spending on education. And people learn better if they're in good health. The healthcare system in this country is nothing short of criminal, where people lose their whole life savings, their homes, their businesses, because they had the misfortune to have a car accident or an illness. Whilst doctors are making $80,000 a year, backhanders to give you poisons. Or doctors in Wisconsin telling 2,400 patients they've got cancer when they don't. $300,000 per person. Nice little earn of that for a snake oil salesman. Again, food, water, energy, health and education should be free or minimal in an advanced society. If you want to make money off that, you're not thinking right. make a living, that's a different thing altogether. If you want to become a millionaire off it, you're in the same program as the cabal psychopaths. We have to think different. We have to be different. That is the way humanity will go forward. Businesses can survive. Instead of the CEO paying themselves 100,000 plus a year, why can't he afford to live on 50 grand a year? It's more than enough for most people. So he can employ some other people part-time. %, profits. You operate on a 10 to 15% profit margin, not 40 to 50 or 60 like some of the corporate conglomerates, because they've got to appease shareholders. They're the problem. They're why everything's so expensive. Shouldn't be any shareholders on food, water, energy at all. They're the basic necessities in life. And the sooner governments and people in general start thinking that way, we're going to move forward a lot quicker than people realise. So if the foundation funds your company and you operate on 10% and you make 20%, you put that 10% profit back into the foundation to help somebody else. So you're still making a good living off it, and you're putting back. Eventually we'll get to a point where everyone's living a reasonable life. Then will we need as many cops? If everyone's got the basic necessities in life, will we need to have as much crime? No. There'll always be criminals. Free will. Some people are just born that way. Some people are born into a location where it's considered the norm. But it doesn't mean to say you have to follow it. Following has not served as well as it. It's time we all became leaders without unbalanced egos, with a clear vision forward for the benefit of all, not I and me. What can I have and what can I get? It's what can we get? And cut out the insidious comparative mindset and competition. It's killing us. A guy I know here, his wife said to try and talk him out of buying a Porsche. She thinks he's having a midlife crisis. I said, no, he wants to show off to people. And we've all done it. So he goes and shows his Porsche off to 10 and 12 people, all go, whoa, that's fantastic. And then he's left with 5 years of payments. For a dozen people to go, wow, is it really worth it? No. It's worth it in their world, not ours. It's shallow. It's not really who and what you are. And if you are that way, maybe you should reconsider. Has it served you or the people around you well? Where you're showing off your latest car as a status symbol. But while people continue applying as a status symbol There's always going to be the have-nots. But if it becomes a status symbol where we all have what we need, not what we want, what we need, then isn't that a better achievement than 1,000 people going and buying Porsches or Bentleys or whatever other fancy car? Or 5-acre plots and South Fork mansions for people to go, wow. But then you're left with 30 years of paying that for that few wows. It's not worth it. I know, because I did it. Not necessarily the car, but I've always been conservative, but we went too far with the last house, and it became a millstone. Or for 6 families to come over from the UK and go, wow, this is fantastic. But we're continuing to pay over and above the odds for the next 30 years, which ultimately ended in us losing it. What does that tell you? It tells you I was stupid. I played the game. But let's not be stupid forever. Let's learn and let's move forward. Where are we? If Levashov and Fomenko are correct, I don't know whether I asked this question last week. I'll ask it again. We have 1,000 years less history than we are told. Do you know a source of the correct calendar for our recent history? No, I don't. There's that many calendars, Mayans and Julius calendars and Gregorian, and it's whatever suited the Vatican and their Draco overlords. And yes, there is huge gaps in our history. Try 16,500 years that we haven't been told about. But yes, there was a major gap of history. I think it's 300 years, 700 to 1,000, but it could be right. It could be 1,000 years. What is ultimate reality? Nature, trees, the sky, everything inside this matrix. I don't think it's a matrix anymore. I think we're stepping out of it. Some hold on to the residue of it. It is computer generated. Once we leave this server, move to the next reality, how will we know it's not a matrix? When you recognize who and what you are, would be my answer. That's more profound than you realise. Is it possible to be taught by manner, treaty, laws and codes of conduct? I don't think they have those. I suppose there's the council codes, which is cosmic law or natural law. It's fairly simple. Again, she explained it last night. It's only 4 laws: don't injure, harm, steal or murder. We don't need all the Latin, Draco, legalese bullshit that nobody understands, including lawyers. But it's not meant to be understood. It's all babble. Incoherent babble. Lawyers think they're all clever. No, they must be clever if they read and understand that dribble. Because that's basically what it is. Nobody really knows, and you just make stuff as they go along. When, yet again, everything could be simple. Personal responsibility. You don't injure someone, you don't harm someone, you don't steal, and you don't murder people. Fairly simple, isn't it? If everyone applied that, like I said previous, do we need cops? No. So not many of us like cops. They're not a likeable bunch. Most of us are anti-authority. But then if everyone acted with personal responsibility, we wouldn't need cops in society. because no one would steal, no one would kill each other. Singapore became a sovereign nation. That was in the old trust sovereign nation. Where did they fit in the scheme of things? I haven't heard them mentioned with the Kingdom Manor being sovereign, as they are completely separate from Malaysia, Great Britain. Well, it was kind of covered last night. We've kind of left out certain names of countries. I know I've been bombarded from Holland and South Africa and Australia and New Zealand, Ireland, Canada. When are we getting our sovereignty? Well, all the papers are there. And if we're kind of unsure of how an announcement, I think there's kind of been an announcement, and there's kind of been hinting towards certain changes where it'll just fall into place rather than complete uproar. You know, many of you listened to last night's show perhaps we're hearing some stuff for the first time ever. Well, what chance has sleepers got? None. And so things will be changed, and have been changed actually radically behind the scenes. This was the plan. I've said this all along. There was stuff going on when I was still in Cosmic Voice. And the plan was everything was going to be quiet. But then it comes down to the people who are delivering the information telling you that there's things going on. Do you trust what they're saying? Well, over the, 20 months of THI, you've seen a fair bundle of it play out. You know, things we said that perhaps weren't heard in the right way. No, I don't believe that, and no, you're wrong on this person, and that's fine. But all of a sudden it all falls into place, and that's kind of what's happening, or going to happen going forward. There'll be a series of small events and mini announcements. There may be one big announcement. Did I say a parade? Maybe. But that's the way it's going to be. People are going to be removed, and you're going to go, I haven't heard from her, him, or it. You know, all this Democrat and Republican battling, and not a single word for man. Wonder why? Mr. McCain's gone rather quiet. Perhaps Mr. Cheney's gone quiet permanently. Time will tell. So, once, I would personally like an announcement, not because it then validates what myself and Kim have been saying, because we already know that, but it would send a shockwave around the world that if Americans can step out and become sovereign and ignore the clowns and the threats of the Rothschilds et al., then so can we. And perhaps we can ask the Americans and the actual American military now, as Mr. Trump has control of it, to support that particular nation. Not attack it like we have been doing, but defend it whilst they complete the paperwork for that nation to become sovereign. Once the threat is removed, then so should the troops, and they should all come home. No need for 800 bases around the world. That was Rothschild bases, in essence, and cabal. Is urine therapy the water of life or the fountain of youth? It can self-heal. I have read into this, and I watched the video a long time ago, maybe a decade ago. I know it sounds unpalatable, pardon the pun. But if you put a small amount of the first sample of a morning under the tongue, you don't have to swallow it. It sends signals directly to the brain that there's something in it that shouldn't be there, and then it targets the region. That's how it works. Well, it's not the fountain of youth. The fountain of youth is actually below my feet. The real fountain of youth. Where are we next? Do you think that the movement forward we are experiencing is also partially due to some help and assistance from the students of Levashov? That will have helped, because that knowledge is groundbreaking. It covers all aspects of life. And yet again, there was a man who proved time and time and time again his abilities and his knowledge, as he was challenged and challenged and challenged and challenged. Sound familiar? The same as the entity known as Jesus. No one believed him until after he died. No one believed Levashov until after he died. Martin Luther King, JFK. Why have people got to die before you start believing them? Gandhi is another one. Even Mandela, to a point. He wasn't all clean, by the way, but he said a lot of profound things. And yet somehow or other people trust everything the Dalai Lama says, except he's cabal. Funny that, isn't it? So Levashov and the knowledge surrounding that will play a role going forward, because it covers all aspects of life. The bits of my knowledge that I added into those shows, for the people who are new to this show, it's called the Humanity Unplugged and Humanity Unplugged 2. It covers all aspects of life. Our past, our present, our future, our genetic makeup, illness, how to cure it, about plants, everything. And he was challenged and challenged and challenged and proved it, and people still disbelieved it. It's a strange world, it really is. Can the control structuralist spoke about previously with the government 4 inches from the bottom be made public, or at least to us lot? I sure would like to see it. Maybe one day. Maybe one day. I would suggest further forward with that. Maybe some of those names. No, best not. Who is going to enforce these changes through if politicians, governments and others won't see sense and assist? I think they are. There's a lot in the government, and this show has criticised them. But like I said earlier, you'd be amazed at how little they know. They're just taught to follow, and this is the problem. The military people, they're taught to follow. You go to school, repeat after me. Don't think for yourself. We can't carry on doing that. And so a lot of the governments themselves, because they are panicking now because they are bankrupt and they've got to explain to people where all the money went. So who's going to get lynched if the world collapses? Well, the politicians will. Is it really their fault? Not really. It's the string holders. So the people will force through the changes. The movement, it's not just the Manor Wealth Holding Trust and our team, there's people all over the world that are forcing things through in a quiet and steady way. That's not going to cause upset. The information you mentioned a few shows about the rods in the earth, where did this come from? The team is all I'll say in that for now. In a previous radio show, the control by the Vatican was not mentioned, but I understood that they were ultimately given the orders and collecting part of the tax money. Yeah, that is correct. Could you elaborate on their role in regards to America and the World Trust? Well, now they have none. You heard what it said last night, and in the letter, we're not at the behest of any thing or anybody else, be it corporation, be it society, be it faction, be it the Crown or the Vatican. America is complete sovereign. So those entities can think they can interfere, but it's up to Mr. Trump, the now restored American government and commander-in-chief, to turn round and tell them to go and F themselves, which is basically the gist of what happened to Mr. Kissinger. Oops. So why do you think the agents came out on the internet, started to discredit Kim and the Manor Wealth Holding Trust in the past week? Because they realised they've lost. Oops. So Vatican are still playing games, but there's a movement within the Vatican that's also cleaning house. Just wondering if Canada was one of the countries that are going to be sovereign now, and if our government's not agreed to be sovereign, what recourse does the average Canadian have, if any, if our government is not on board? You can vote them out. En masse. It's as simple as that. And get people out of the alternative community, and there's many Canadians up there, to replace them. Why do we have to wait for them? We have the knowledge, and we go in there with bundles of knowledge that they can't even dream about. Use it. Become a politician and be the change. Is the Holy Bible relevant? It depends on what you mean by the term relevant. I'm not dodging the question, but I will answer all possibilities. The Holy Bible, as I understand it, or Bible, is the Draco story. It's nothing to do with us and our people. The Lord is Anu, the dictator, as mentioned in last night's show. The former dictator. Cain and Abel, Enki and Enlil, it's all the same stuff. Add in the Egyptian fun and games, which is the last major public interference. But then Moses and Tutmosis, it's all the same people. They live a lot longer than we do. Ra, Marduk, Helios, Horus, it's all the same people. Satan, Set, Typhon, same person. It's all off-world fun and games. So if you're looking for enlightenment from that book, then you quite clearly see it's got a rather dark path. It's not benevolent, is it? Such and such begets such and such. In other words, it's inbreeding. Wonder who does that? Wonder who copied that? So, there is moral lessons in the Bible which should be observed by all. But if you're looking for it to be relevant to our history, it's not. It's his story, Anu's story, not ours. And that's going to upset a load of people. I understand that. But because that is another program that's been pushed into humans to seek outside of themselves, when all the answers were within. We go to great lengths, all of us, myself included, to give credit outside of yourself. Oh, I did this and it was just a coincidence. Maybe the Lord helped me, or maybe God helped me. What? You may not consider maybe it was you that did? Well, that would be classed as magic or the supernatural. Well, there's only gods, are only they capable of doing that? Well, clearly not. So the church wants you to be outside of yourself, so there's a higher power than you. There isn't. Just because Trump's the president doesn't make him a higher power than you. It just means he's doing a different job. To the public, it's more important than maybe a property maintenance manager or a hairdresser. It's still a job at the end of the day, isn't it? And what's tiptoed in over the last 100 years is they are the authority. No, they're not. We've forgotten that. They are profession holders, tasked to do a job on behalf of the people. They're not the authority, no more than the police or the judges are. They're not authority. But we all frightened if the IRS or the police turn up or the judge starts speaking. Why? Because we keep giving our power away is why. Thinking somebody else is always more important than me. Stop doing that, because they're not. So, if the domed, immovable, disc-shaped flat earth is in the scriptures, in your opinion, what are the truths? Well, there's flat earth people all over the globe, is my opinion. Sorry, I've covered that many times. Is the recourse for those that invested in dinars and dongs with benevolent intentions? I meant to ask this question during the show when it came up, and then we got sidetracked on something else. I will get clarity. It has been mentioned. We did discuss it many months ago, that maybe the trust can at least give the people the money back. You're not going to be millionaires and multi-billionaires, which would have been ridiculous anyway. And maybe some of that can go into the foundation. Whatever the rate is, if you get your money back, technically you've not lost anything other than a bit of interest, which we don't earn from banks anyway. So you've not really lost anything. So I will pursue that. I think it's a good idea, providing it's been some of it, not all of it, because it is their people's money, could be used maybe for the People's Club Foundation, or maybe used for something else of their choice. So I'll pursue that and see where that goes. What happens if California votes on exiting United States of America? Will it be sovereign? No. Is anything being done to save California from all the evil that's been orchestrated? Well, with the sovereignty, that some of that fun and games might be stopped. But people have to be patient. I know that's not what you want to hear. You know, I keep saying there's 489 aspects of life that have to be changed or repurposed or cancelled or improved. 489. And there's 209 countries to do it in. It's a monumental overhaul. And there will be things that we want done right away. That might be your choice. But there's other people who want this choice, and other people want this choice, and other people want that choice, you know. And then there's some people who just want all of it done yesterday, including myself, I might add, so that I can get on with better things. But it takes time, and it will take time. It will be eased in, but I'm hoping there'll be some things that are addressed quickly. Chemtrails being one of them. Whatever's in it, we want the full truth of what's in it and why, and that'll finish that debate once and for all. And the other thing I would like is the troops brought home where they should be, with the families. That in it, those two in itself, to me, declares America sovereign. We've taken control of the military and they're back home, because there's no real need to be fighting any other country currently anyway. None of them are attacking us. In fact, we haven't been attacked since Pearl Harbor, and that was fake. Let's go down a bit. Always for time. What are the concerns around having Miss Manor as the only one with the codes? And what are the pluses in having her in that singular role? Well, there used to be others, but for speed and trust, she went forward on her own. Unfortunately, at certain times, some people think that they should be the one, and it turns into an ego game again. And because they're not the one, they go back to where they came from. Rothschilds, Crown, et al., factions. And this is the type of silliness that's gone on. And what I do know, I'm going to be brief on this because I don't want to go too far with it, is there are conditions in place that should she fall, either by being taken out, of which there's been numerous attempts, or by being badly influenced by whatever means, it will never go back into their hands again. There are conditions put in place that it's not returned to them. It has a 500-year contract, and so it stays with the people. But I do understand the question. The pluses, she has a team. She mentioned it last night, including myself. That's their support now. Allowing her to not bang her head too much dealing with stupidity. You've no idea. Some of the comments and levels of narrative that comes out of the mouths of these clowns. I said to her last night, I'm surprised you still got a forehead that doesn't resemble Wilcox. Because I think most of us would be literally banging our heads against walls listening to clowns day in, day out, coming up with the latest bizarre scheme. You know, who would forget the one last year where some certain clowns, I will say, I don't want to label, came to the meeting and said they're getting higher dimensional US dollars from the ETs. If they're higher dimensional, you won't be able to see them on this planet, never mind that they might just happen to print the same notes as we do. And this is the level of stupidity we have to put up with. And Cheney coming round with his jackbooted thugs, the old Blackwater crew, because he goes everywhere with them, because he's frightened of being taken out. It may be some of them turned against him. We'll see. Since we are sovereign, can we petition our states for alloidal land title? If we own our properties, are we also getting crushed by property taxes? Good question, and I don't know the answer. You know, there'll be things that come out as things are unveiled. I know it's important to say certain things, like I said about 5 minutes ago, certain things are more important to certain people. But you've got to understand this is about the all. You know, there's 99% of American people who have never even heard of the term alloidal title. That doesn't mean to say that it's not valid. But what I'm saying is it's not something that's going to come up straight away. It may do. You know, I don't know all the answers of how it's going to roll out. You know, there's so many things that have to be dealt with, like the next question. Even with the possibility of zero of taxation may be considered to be lowered, the fact that people's paychecks, income, retirement, monthly checks from various sources, companies, corporations, social security, VA, and just about all items, commodities people buy for daily use, necessities are taxed in excess. There is a benefit for the people of lowering taxation. Yes, and it should be, in my opinion. But I'm not making the rules. But once certain things roll out, they are aware now of the theft, not only from the people, but also of the country. And as long as I'm still playing a role in it, I will keep reminding. But to me, it's far better. It seems the way it's going to go. It's going to go into projects rather than the $6 million handouts some clowns on the internet decided we were all going to get. Like that's going to, you know, it's just not going to improve it. Again, that was explained last night, how that works. There's nothing to support that 6 million. It would collapse the whole economy, so your 6 million devalues by over 50% and then 50% like the stock market, because it'll just keep going down. And so you're sitting there with a couple of $100 when you had 6 million. Well, if it keeps devaluing because you've just overloaded the system, your $6 million has vanished overnight. A bit like the Bitcoin. Is the additional taxation with the income tax IRS really a just and fair necessity in the plans moving forward? In my opinion, no. How that's going to be repurposed, I will imagine there'll be much headbanging going on, but we have to step away from the Crown. Maybe the IRS has to come off being a Puerto Rican trust and is stationed on the mainland. Puerto Rico is not part of America, despite what they think. And it comes on the mainland, and we reduce the taxes to minimal. Because even if it, like I said last night, even if it's just 1% tax from everybody, it's still 1% extra for the American economy or government. So why not do it? We've gone 85 years of paying taxes and getting zero benefit out of it, apart from the 10% operating costs that might give a few people jobs in the IRS. But you can reduce it to 1%. But that's me, simple thinking. Not everyone simple thinks. And I hope we can push things, but it's up to all the people to push things. Once certain amounts of the truth comes out, you know, if this goes out public about the taxes, they're all going to be demanding the tax, you know, the income tax be cancelled altogether. And technically it should. As we move forward, and we don't have that excess need where we always need a better car and a better house every couple of years. There's nothing wrong with the one you've got now. You don't need to go from a 42-inch TV to a 56-inch TV. The need to have that amount of money dwindles. And you can still have a much happier life. If you're not competing with people, you have no idea how much easier and free you feel stepping out of that comparative mind program. Miss Von Wright should do that, and quickly, because that's what she exhibited yesterday. Somebody did it better. Great, is my opinion. There's lots of people who do radio shows better than me. Great. Does it matter? If they're putting out intelligent conversation that makes people think, or the truth, does it really matter whether I get 1,000 listeners or 1 million? In some aspects it would be better, but it's not the driving goal. Is the income tax IRS under consideration? Again, these type of questions we don't know as yet. It's all very new, and some people are still messing their trousers up. Thinking, oh my God, what are we going to do with this? And you'll have to see how it plays out. I know it's not really the answer you want to hear, but that's the truth of it. There's a number of questions on the IRS and taxes. I can see where people are going with their thinking, and we will push on it. It should be dealt with. Same applies to property taxes. You know, they could certainly improve people's lives by lowering the property tax, by then taking some of the vast amounts of funds in the CAFA accounts. You know, I'll just give a simple equation it, if they reduce property taxes by 50%, that to most people is a vacation money, which far too many people in this country don't have. They can't afford it. We've gone away, everything's to do with work and paying for technology, and vacations have been dumped. No. Everyone needs that time off, says the person who gets none. But that would make a big difference. You're going away for a week with the money saved, not paying half your property taxes. That's a small change in people's lives and a big change on your outlook. And that, to me, has to be the way forward. Flooding people with money will just lead to chaos, sadly, because we're not responsible with it. My husband and I are being taxed out of our home for 31 years despite being otherwise paid for. Is there any chance that social security payments will go up, which would help so many seniors? Again, it's not a question I can really answer. We'll have to see how it plays out. I would imagine, given the push, there will be a lot more funding for children and a lot more funding for the elderly. A nation that ignores both is not a good society. And that's something that we have to address. Will all the assets, dollars and gold taken off world now be returned to the various countries from where they are stolen? Good question. I have to be careful. It may not. It may well be the case. But there will be a fund, there is a trust fund that will allocate certain assets based on it. Certain amounts of gold are placed in regions around the planet to keep the planet in orbit. So it can't be moved. Certain other aspects have been removed to stop them using it. Whether they'll be returned in situ remains to be seen. But if the system is a lot more transparent, then there's no real need to hoard certain things, like in Fort Knox, that's been empty for quite a while, as it got looted. There's been no audit in Fort Knox since 1953. Imagine the shock when the world finds out there's none there. As the Germans found out when they asked for the gold back and were told 7 years, which is basically 7 years worth of gold mining. So in other words, they didn't have it. Now, some cases they didn't have it because they moved it elsewhere, and other cases they didn't have it because it was taken off them. Oops. And they're not getting it back. Them clowns, anyway. How are we for time? That's probably getting near the end. Managed to get through most of the questions. I think that'll be it for now. Yep. 3 shows and 3 nights, I think, is enough. 4 in 5 days is enough. So, there's not much intel, but then there was a lot of intel last night. All I can tell you, as was allayed to last night, is things are progressing on various levels. be it governance, be it sovereignty, be it finances, moves with banks. Again, that was mentioned last night. Once the banks are sorted, things will roll, including the foundation. Now, like I said, we will have to be patient with it. I know it's not what you want to hear. I do know that. But we have to think rather, some of the questions is, will I get my tax back? Will I get my house back? Will I get my property taxes back? I appreciate that's all personal to you. But perhaps we should start thinking, will we get the homeless off the streets? Will we take the 1 in 6 in America children out of the poverty zone? And yes, the foreclosure issue has to be dealt with. I am a victim the same as a lot of people. Fortunately, I'm in a better position than most others because of previous investments. But still not right. Where you can hand over $220,000 plus $80,000 in improvements, so a total of $300,000, and they ask you tell you that you owe $350,000 on a $342,000 mortgage. Really? That's theft of the highest order, and all of us have signed up for that. And that's why we have to start looking at things properly, inquiring things. Like I said before, we don't mind. Both myself and Kim will make ourselves available to answer the awkward questions. We do it each week. But if people applied the same levels of questioning to other people in the community, or how governments run things, or how banks run things, or how the law run things, then the truth will be much more available to much more people on a far wider scale. But we always seem to want to attack the ones that are doing something. Again, we have to stop that. Because that's kind of insecurity of yourself, that you feel you're not as elevated as perhaps someone who has. But if those people are not elevating themselves above you, why should you feel you're below them? You shouldn't. And neither of us, and I've met one or two of the other members of the team, have unbalanced egos. Maybe they were the perfect people to go forward with. Because all the other ones have failed because they couldn't control themselves. They saw a little bit of money, a little bit of a title, and suddenly they go off the rails. In other words, they become part of the same old guard system. How is that going to achieve anything? It's not, and it hasn't. And if people want to see us as a model to step forward, then fine. If you think that model is suitable for you, you have your own free will choice. So, deeper thinking is required on how we can go forward. Think about what I said to do if you set up a business or the foundation funds your business. Do you like that idea that I put forward? Because that's all it is. It's an idea. It doesn't mean to say it has to be implemented. But is that, surely it's a better way of running business in life that everyone shares, rather than everyone competes and people lose their businesses and lose their life and lose their homes. So everyone has a business, everyone has a life, and everyone has a home. That's surely better than what we've got now. And all that changes is a change of mindset. No more comparative mind. Right. I'm going to have a rest on shows now. Whether I get a rest is another matter. Given my boss is a bit nutty. It's just the way things are. Like I said, we all want the changes to happen quickly, none more than me. I'd like to be talking about, we've just set up this project and we've funded this person and fixed this sewer for this person or this phone for this person, and we've moved forward and done happy and nice things. But we've still got a bit of way to go, and but we are making big progress. I'll be back. I'm going to apologise to Daryl Hibbard, who is going to be on this Sunday. I'm going to take a rest. I think I need it. I flagged out yesterday. And so apologies to Daryl, and apologies for people who may miss my voice. But you've had plenty of shows to catch up. Robert Baxter's listened to last night's show 3 times already. I think he got up to 55 with the previous one. So there's plenty to listen to, and plenty, as per usual, to ponder over. And I hope Anna doesn't continue the nonsense. You pushed me into saying that. I didn't really want to say it, but you left me with no option. It's time to step out of faction games and start playing for the benefit of the people, and not factions, and not Anavon rights. All people. That includes Neil Keaton, Wilcock, Drake, Cosmic Voice. Everyone's going to be needed to be part of the push forward to change the world. Not our group's better than your group. It's rubbish. Let's move forward. So the final song is a pointer. And again, it's a pondering one. And this has kind of been the theme of tonight's show. Whilst it's exciting, all these things are happening, not everything will happen overnight, not